All right, today we're going to talk about radical equations. If a is equal to b, then if I was to square a, that would mean that b would be squared. And what that means is, and I can use this to solve a problem like this. If the square root of x is 4, then I can square the square root of x, and that gives me 4 squared. All right, so using, which this is called the power property of equality. Right, and if you square both sides of a true equation, then the resulting equation is true. And I'm going to use it for problems like this. So write this down. Square root of a plus 5, when it's added to 7, it's equal to 12. So I want to figure out what the square root of a plus 5 is. So the first thing I do is subtract 7. I want to get the radical sign by itself. I want to have it on one side. So I've got the square root of a plus 5 on one side, and I've got, what's 12 minus 7? 5 on the other. So now, right, I can get rid of the radical sign by squaring both sides. Because if I square the square root of a plus 5, I get a plus 5. Right, they cancel each other out. It's like, if I had a squared and I want to get rid of a squared and just get a, then I'd square root it. They're opposites of each other. They cancel itself out. So a plus 5 is equal to, what's 5 squared? 5. All right. So I subtract 5 both sides, and I find that a is equal to 20, which I can check if I want to. Plug it in here. 20 plus 5 is 25. The square root of 5 is 5. 5 plus 7 is 12. So a must be 20. The square root of c minus 3. When you subtract 2 from it, you get 4. So I'm trying to figure out what c is. So I add 2 because I want to get what's under the radical sign by itself. So I add 2 both sides. I get the square root of c minus 3 on one side. I get 6 on the other. Now I use the power property of equality, right, knowing that if I square one side and square the other, it remains true. So square root of c minus 3, when I square it, I get c minus 3. I just cancel out the square and the square root. 6 squares 36. So I add 3 of both sides, and I get c is equal to 39. I can check my answer. 39 minus 3 is 36. The square root of 36 is 6. 6 minus 2 is 4. C must be 39. Any questions? Alright, you guys work this one out. Alright, so check over mine. I want to subtract 4 to each side first because I want to isolate the radical. I want to get the radical sign, which is what's under is h plus 1 by itself. So I want h plus 1 here. And on the other side, I've got 10. So I square both sides. It gives me h plus 1 here. It gives me 100 here. So h must be 99. Here you're given the square root of k plus 1 is equal to k minus 1. Though I want to get the radical sign by itself, which it already is. Right? So now I go ahead and square it. The problem is, well, it's not really a problem, but it's something you need to know, is that you can't just square you can't just square here, or you can't just square here. You square the entire thing on the other side. So you have to square k minus 1. Well, the square root of k plus 1 squared will just give me k plus 1. And then I do k minus 1 squared, which from my rule, you guys know this, it's the first thing squared minus 2 times the first thing times the second thing, so it will give you minus 2k plus the second thing squared, so that would just give you 1. I always want to set things to 0, so I'm going to subtract 1 and I'm going to subtract k because I want 0 on one side. So I've got k squared minus 3k. Right, these would cancel itself out. Is there anything I can factor out of k squared minus 3k? K. What would be left?
3.
If I took k out of k squared, what would be left?
K.
If I took k out of minus 3k, what would be left?
Minus 2k.
Minus 3. It's division. Right, not subtraction. so it would be minus 3. This is equal to 0, so what I do is I answer both. K here, this K, is going to be equal to 0. Because if it's on the outside, it's got to be equal to 0. And then I do, because think about it, if I eliminated this, if this was gone, then K would be equal to 0. So this K is 0. And then I do K minus 3 equal to 0. Would K have to be there? Positive 3. So my two answers are 0 and 3. The issue is sometimes they're not always going to work. And let me show you. Plug 0 into here. What is 0 plus 1?
0.
1. What is the square root of 1? 1, right? What is 0 minus 1?
Negative 1.
Is 1 equal to negative 1?
No.
So would 0 work? No. So this is what we call an extraneous solution. It does not fit. If you plug 3 in, what's 3 plus 1?
4.
What's the square root of 4?
2.
Right? And what is 3 minus 1?
2.
So would 3 work? So there's your answer. That's why you have to check your answers because of extraneous solutions. Right? There's a solution that might work here, but it's not going to work in here. All right? Any questions? All right, write this down. Square root of t plus 5 equals t minus 3, so I square both sides. That gives me t plus 5 on this side. And it gives me when I take, which if you're ever confused with t minus 3 squared, you can always just do t plus 3 times t plus 3 and FOIL it, which you end up with t squared plus 6t plus 9. First thing squared plus 2 times the first thing times the second thing plus the second thing squared. Now you want to get 0 on one side, so I should subtract 5. I'm also going to subtract t. That gives me 0 is equal to t squared plus 5t plus 4. Alright, any questions so far? So now I look, see, can I factor this? Well, what would add to give me 5 and multiply give me 4? 4 and 1, right? Everybody agree? So if I set them equal to 0 and I do t plus 4 equal to 0, I get t is equal to negative 4. If I do t plus 1 equal to 0, I get negative 1. So now what I want to do is I want to check my answer. I want to plug these in and see if they work. So I do negative 4 plus 5 and get 1, the square root of 1 equal to negative 4 plus 3 and get negative 1. What's the square root of 1?
1.
Is 1 equal to negative 1?
No.
So negative 4 is out. Now we try negative 1. Negative 1, I plug in here. That gives me the square root of 4 equals 2. Is that a true statement? So negative 1 is the only answer that works. Any questions? X minus 3 is equal to the square root of x minus 1, so I'm going to square both sides. X minus 3 squared, I can just take x minus 3 times x minus 3 if I need to. Or I can do x squared minus 6x plus 9, which is equal to x minus 1. Add 1 to both sides, subtract x to both sides. That gives me x squared minus 7x plus 10, which is equal to 0. So, if I'm going to split this up, and since I know there's no a, I can just write it as x minus something and x be both x minus something, because this is positive and that's negative. So that means they're both going to be negative. What would multiply give me 10 and add to give me negative 7?
5 and 2.
5 and 2 or 2 and 5. I set them equal to 0, so I do each one separately. X minus 5 equal to 0. So I add 5 to both sides. X equals 5. Then I do x minus 2 equals 0. I add 2 to both sides. So my two answers are 5 and 2. Should I just assume they're both right? No, I need to check my answer. So first thing I'm gonna do is plug 5 in. So 5 minus 3 is 2. And then the square root of 5 minus 1 is 4. What's the square root of 4? 2, so 5 works. Now plug in 2. 2 minus 3 is negative 1. And then we do 2 minus 1. What's 2 minus 1?
1.
Is the square root of 1 equal to negative 1?
No.
No.
Oh. I got that backwards.
No, that's not right. So the only answer it could be is 5. Here's your assignment.